It's that time of the month again, a new patch, and some new chaos. What is up, ProGuides family? Christoph here with you guys again. I'm so happy to be back with you all. I've missed you guys. I've been grinding the preseason, I've been having a good time, and I've been talking to my challenger friends, ready to give you guys all of their tips so that you guys can climb in the preseason too. Over the past couple weeks, I've been working on this new documentary channel about all of gaming documentaries. I've worked so hard on it. If you guys would do me a huge favor, I'd appreciate it if you guys all liked that channel. The videos we've been making are so good. I hope you guys enjoy them. And with that being said, let's get into our question of the day. Which role do you think is the strongest right now? Personally, I think it's going to be the jungle because of how much they've changed the items this preseason. There's a lot more power the champions can acquire now, and they're not forced to build one of the jungle items, which were a bit weaker in the late game anyways. On top of this, they've got a ton of smite upgrades too, but I want to hear your guys' answer in the comments down below. Mine is definitely jungle. And with that being said, we are going to get into my favorite section, the skins section. Two sets of skins have been released this patch, the Battle Queen line and some additional Elderwood ones. Battle Queen Diana, Janna, Katarina, Kiana, and a Prestige edition of the Diana skin are now available. For the Elderwood skins, we got Elderwood Azir, Ivern, Ornn, Rakan, and Xayah can now be purchased in the store. They look great, and if you guys are fans of previous Elderwood skins, you need to take a look at these ones. Next up though, let's run through the balance changes. This patch features a ton of changes to systems through item balance changes, so let's start with the nerfs. It's clear that Riot thinks that tanks are too powerful because they've nerfed all the tank mythic items this patch. You don't have to nerf every single tank when the simple solution is to nerf the items that they all build instead. SUNFIRE AEGIS especially has been providing too much power, and Riot is taking steps to reduce the agency tanks have. SUNFIRE AEGIS, Frostfire Gauntlet, and Turbo CHEMTANK have all been nerfed. The first nerf comes as a universal nerf to these items, as Balmy Cinder has had its price increase from 1,000 to 1,100. This will slow down the scaling just a little bit in the early game, as players will need a little more gold to access the Immolate effect. SUNFIRE AEGIS' health has been reduced from 450 to 350, Frostfire Gauntlet's slow effect radius reduced from 275 to 250, and the increase in size lowered from 7.5% to 6%, and Turbo CHEMTANK's supercharged slow duration lowered from 2 to 1.5. These are all unique nerfs, but surprisingly the damage will stay in place. Although these nerfs might not be what some players wanted to see, there's a lot of implications behind this. It means that tanks are supposed to damage in Season 11. Players will need to find more ways to play around this, and you'll need to make sure you can maintain your distance from them. It also means that if they ever get fed, that yes, they'll be able to dive headfirst and kill several enemies as a result. It's likely that if tanks do receive future nerfs, it'll be to their tankiness and not their damage. SEEKER'S ARMGUARD has also been nerfed. After killing 30 minions, you'll gain the full effect from the passive, gaining a bonus 30 armor. With it, the item is actually worth 1,700 gold in stats. You don't need to be an analyst to understand that having this much gold value in stats in such a cheap item while only taking up one slot is absolutely broken. The AP has been reduced from 30 to 20 this patch, making sure that it'll be a viable defensive purchase, but a little bit less powerful than before. The Collector has also been nerfed. While the item might not seem like much, it provides a combination of damage, lethality, and crit chance. Having these three stats on one item makes it much more powerful than one would ordinarily perceive it to be. It was actually stronger than intended, and thus the execute effect will now only work on champions rather than all enemies. This is taking away some accessory strength though, that wasn't really needed and likely won't change much about the item. Eclipse, guys, has yet again been nerfed this patch, but this one is targeted at ranged champions. We're looking at you, Jhin. Riot isn't happy with the current state of lethality and ranged champions, so we've got some changes to discourage those sorts of builds. The shield value for ranged champions has been reduced from 100 plus 30% bonus AD to 75 plus 20% bonus AD. Too many marksmen have been opting for lethality builds, and while it's fine to have diversity, Eclipse was still a little too strong. With this nerf, you'll likely want to take Immortal Shield Bow as a defensive option rather than dipping into lethality while also gaining a shield from Eclipse. You still can, but it won't be as powerful as before. Duskblade of Drakthar has also been nerfed for ranged champions only. The slow will only apply for melee champions, and this will further discourage marksmen from using lethality-based builds. Mages now use MORGANA because it applies its damage on spells as well, but that's not supposed to be happening. It's an AD item, so now the bonus damage will only apply on spells that deal physical damage. AP champions won't be able to randomly splash physical damage into their builds now, so better luck next time, folks. With the nerfs covered, let's talk about the buffs next. But before we do, if you guys want to get better at League of Legends, you know where to go. Go to ProGuides.com, find your challenger coach right now in the preseason, so that when you begin your promos in ranked when the season comes out, you're actually going to get into a good division. Because we all know if you screw up your promos, you're probably going to be stuck in the division you don't want to be in. We have courses with players like Doublelift and other pro players, so what are you waiting for? Go check it out. It'll definitely be worth your time if you're serious about League of Legends. Spearheading the buffs to marksman items, we've got Gale Force. Gale Force is supposed to be an exciting item that adds tons of outplay potential, and it actually does. Problem is that it's just not worth it. Well, at least it wasn't worth it. It's gotten a huge buff this patch, as its AD went up from 55 to 60, while the active cooldown was reduced from 90 to 60 seconds. That cooldown reduction alone was a monumental change, and there's no doubt that people will be more willing to give it a chance this patch. Moving on, we've got buffs to non-mythic items as well. Crit items got buffed, that's for sure, and that's going to be to your Zeal, Phantom Dancer, and Rapid Cannons, which have all had their price reduced. Zeal's price was lowered from 1,200 to 1,050, while Phantom Dancer and Rapid Fire Cannon now cost 200 less, leaving them for sale at 2,500 gold. Marksmen can now scale faster than before, and building a standalone Zeal is even easier than ever. Infinity Edge has gotten a change to make it more versatile and flexible in builds as well. For items when you just need a little bit more damage, Infinity Edge should be a solid purchase. However, with how it was originally designed this preseason, you were forced to build it very late into builds, otherwise it wouldn't be as efficient. It also forced you into very specific builds if you wanted one. The buff is now flat with a condition: you need to have at least 60% crit chance already. Thus, you'll gain an immediate 35% crit damage buff as long as you break this threshold, meaning it will be viable to build Infinity Edge as a third item. This also means that you won't have to opt into a 100% crit build anymore to maximize its value, and can incorporate it into a variety of builds. The next four items are receiving small changes, so we'll lump them together. Essence Reaver's attack damage was buffed from 50 to 55, Mortal Reminder's cost down from 2,700 to 2,500, Lord Dominic's Regards AD up from 30 to 35, and Scimitar's cost up 100, but its AD also went up from 30 to 40. While these are situational items that some marksmen use specifically for their own builds, or tech items you build against certain champions on the enemy team, you're almost always going to want to build at least one of these in your game. Overall, the marksman class is going to end up stronger though, either extra stats or lowered cost of items, which is great. With marksman items out of the way, let's talk about support items, beginning with Bandleglass Mirror. For an epic item, this item doesn't really feel very powerful. Completing this doesn't really feel like much of a power spike at all, actually. But it now costs 100 less, so you'll be able to clear up your inventory faster than before. While you don't get much of a boost for finishing Bandleglass Mirror, it's an easy way to access 10 ability haste. We might even see some non-support builds go for it every now and then. Now onto mythic items: Imperial Mandate, Moonstone Renewer, Shiralia's Battle Song, and Locket of the Iron Solari have all been buffed. A bit weaker than before, but also cheaper, so it's a net positive for sure. Hitting your mythic item power spike earlier is a huge deal, so even a small nerf is worth it if it means you finish that item faster. All these items cost 200 less, leaving them at a price point of 2,500 gold. Imperial Mandate has gotten an adjustment. Rather than dealing 60 to 100 on its initial proc, it'll deal 36 to 60. However, the ally proc damage has been increased from 60 to 100 to 90 to 150. Situationally, it's a buff, while at other times it's a nerf. Still, it's cheaper, so you have to take that into consideration. Moonstone Renewer's initial heal has gone up from 60 to 90 to 70 to 100, but will only scale up by 12.5% per second in combat from 25%. This also means you'll cap at a 50% bonus. Trillia's Battle Song's bonus damage buff has been reduced from 40 to 60 to 35 to 55. And Locket of the Iron Solari's shield has been lowered from 250 to 420 to 230 to 385. Next up is Zeke's Convergence. A lot more power has actually been shifted into its effect. For stats, its health has gone down from 300 to 250 and armor down from 30 to 25. In return, the mark duration was doubled from 4 to 8 seconds, and the damage has gone up from 25 to 50 to 35 to 70. The double duration is an insane buff, as players will have much longer windows to work off of. Ardent Censer and Staff of Flowing Water also got a small buff this patch. They both build out of Amplifying Tome rather than Blasting Wand now. While the total cost remains unchanged, this once again helps out supports by allowing them to pick up cheaper upgrades along the way to their completed items. It's not always that easy to base with enough for a Blasting Wand, but enough for an Amplifying Tome is usually doable. Luden's Tempest has gotten a buff as well. The ability haste was increased by 10, but magic penetration lowered by 4. Thus, it now has 20 ability haste and 6 magic penetration. It's a worthwhile trade for the majority of the cast, as you'll gain access to more ability haste and be able to cast spells much more frequently. Everfrost was also buffed. In the same way, the ability haste went up by 10. Mages in general will now have much more ability haste when they choose one of the 2 mythic items, especially because ultimate abilities tend to have a very long cooldown. This is a very hefty buff. Alright guys, that's it for the item changes, so let's talk about the champion changes next. First is the top lane with Kayle. The nerfs to Kayle last patch weren't enough, and she's getting grilled this time. Her basic magic resistance has been lowered from 34 to 30, and her E passive on hit AP ratio was reduced from 25 to 20. These nerfs should make it a lot easier to bully out Kayle and also hit her mid lane win rate, as she's actually doing very well there as of late. AP champions should have an easier time bursting Kayle down, as that's where she tends to struggle later into the game anyways. Kayle's damage is based off of attack speed alongside her scaling, meaning that she wants to survive extended fights and slap her opponents over and over. Trade patterns based around burst damage give Kayle little time to react, and in the late game, burst damage acts to force her into using her ultimate early as well. Kayle will be moved down to the S tier from the OP tier as a result. Pantheon Top is receiving a buff this patch. First, he now gains 5 stacks on his passive whenever he recalls. His base movement speed was reduced from 355 to 345, but his Q's cooldown was reduced by 2 seconds at all ranks, while the mana cost was reduced from 40 to 30. Releasing the skill early also refunds 60% instead of 50% of the cooldown. It'll no longer slow when empowered, however. His W's base damage was increased significantly from 60 to 140 to 60 to 220, and his E will no longer block turret shots. However, the retreat movement penalty was lowered from 50% to 25%. Empowering his E no longer extends the duration, but instead grants him 60% movement speed for 1.5 seconds when he slams his shield. Finally, the spear that drops from his ultimate will slow for 50% and also apply an unempowered spear's worth of damage around it. He also gains 10, 20, 30 armor penetration based on his ultimate's rank. These changes should heavily discourage players from playing him as a support and push him into the solo lanes once again. His W received a huge buff as well, with 80 more damage, meaning that solo lane experience will be much more valuable on him now than before. We're going to be leaving Pantheon in the A tier for now. Aurelia hasn't been doing too well, so she actually is going to get a buff this patch as well. Her base AD went up from 63 to 65, while her Q cooldown was reduced from 12 to 8 to 11 to 7. The cooldown buff is a nice buff, as the replacement of cooldown reduction with ability haste has definitely done some damage to her mobility. It's a rather small buff, so Aurelia will remain in the B tier for now. Riftmaker's nerfs have left Mordekaiser weaker than intended, and he's going to be getting some direct buffs in compensation this patch. His Q's isolation bonus was increased from 20 to 40% to 30 to 50%, meaning that he'll have an easier time in 1v1s, as well as when he's having a showdown in his ultimate's death realm. We're fine leaving Mordekaiser as a B tier pick, but we'll let you know if anything changes in our mid-patch update next week. Make sure to click that sub button if you want to take a look at that. Finally, Nasus has also not been having a good time with how fast games have been playing out. The cooldown on his Q was lowered by half a second at all ranks this patch. This should help bring him back to a similar power level as before, since ability haste is weaker than cooldown reduction was last season. However, this won't have a huge impact, so we're just going to leave him where he was. Thus, our OP pick for the top lane this patch is Malphite, followed by Kayle, Shen, Wukong, Darius, Camille, Maokai, Ornn, Fiora, and Jax in the S tier. That's it for the top laners, guys, so let's head into the jungle next. First, let's talk about Kayn. It's no surprise he's been pretty broken. His base armor was reduced from 38 to 35, while his Q base damage went from 75 to 155 to 65 to 145 as well. Finally, his Q's cooldown was increased from 6 to 4 seconds to 7 to 5 seconds. Cooldown nerf is an especially big one, and when it was lowered in Season 10, we saw Kayn's win rate jump significantly. With all of these nerfs in place, Kayn should feel much more manageable this patch. We've moved Kayn down from the OP tier into the S tier this patch. Of course, another OP pick that needed a nerf was Amumu. His mana growth has been reverted from 60 to 40, while his E and R have been nerfed. His E's damage has been reduced from 75 to 175 to 75 to 155. Also, his ultimate's duration has been lowered from 2 seconds flat to 1.5, 1.75, and 2 seconds respectively, based on ability level. This nerf should push Amumu out of the OP tier, but leave him as a solid S tier pick for now. Warwick has felt a little bit lackluster the past few patches and has finally gotten some love. His passive's damage went up from 8 to 42 to 12 to 44. Will now include bonus ratios 15% of his bonus AD and 10% of his AP. We're going to be leaving Warwick in the B tier for now. He was underperforming before, but this buff should leave him in a healthy enough spot to stay in the B tier. Wukong jungle has been underperforming, so his E is now going to be dealing 150% damage to monsters. It's a small buff, but should hopefully make his jungle clear a little bit faster and safer. We're going to be moving him up into the B tier as a result of this change. Next up is a buff for Rengar jungle. His W extra healing from monster damage went up from 50% to 100%, and his W will also deal 65 to 130 bonus damage to monsters, scaling with his champion level. These are massive buffs to the poor cat who's been a former shell of himself. We've bumped Rengar up to the B tier as well. All of the champions in the jungle are actually a little bit difficult to play. Kayn, Rengar, Echo, Nidalee, Lee Sin, all of these jungle champions that we're talking about require some mechanical skill. If you guys want to master any of these champions and you want to take the jungle role to the next level, go check out ProGuides and get your Challenger jungle coach to help you out this season. Echo jungle is also getting some love as his passive damage to monsters is receiving a huge buff from 150% to 250%. Another jungle change for yet another jungler who's fallen off heavily this preseason. Echo will be moved to the B tier with the result of this change. Nidalee was also buffed up this patch. Her spear's minimum damage has gone up from 70 to 130 plus 50% to 70 to 150 plus 70% AP, while the max damage has had its base damage increase from 210 to 390 to 210 to 450. The mana cost on her Q was reduced from 50 to 90 to 50 to 70, while her E's mana cost went from 60 to 120 to 50 to 90. Nidalee will also be moved up into the B tier because of this buff. Lee Sin has felt weak for a while now, and the preseason unfortunately didn't help him out as much as expected. His base armor has been increased from 33 to 36, his W cooldown reduced from 14 to 12, and his E's damage increased from 80 to 240 to 100 to 260. With several buffs, he's expected to feel much better this patch. For now, we'll be leaving him in the B tier because of his excessively low win rate, and update you guys in our next mid-patch update if anything changes. Next, we have Gragas. His passive healing went up from 6 to 8% of his maximum health, while his W's cooldown was decreased from 6 to 5 seconds. This should leave Gragas feeling much more durable than before and might even encourage more tank Gragas builds. He'll stay in the C tier for now, but we'll keep our eyes on him. Ivern has received direct buffs this patch as well as some indirect ones with support items having their prices reduced. His Q's cooldown was reduced from 14 to 10 to 12 to 8, while his E's shield AP ratio increased from 80 to 90%. The E cooldown has been reduced from 12 to 8 to 10 to 6 seconds, while Daisy's attack speed was increased from 0.623 to 0.7. These buffs are numerous enough to have an effect on him, and we've moved him up to the B tier as a result. Karthus got crushed by the preseason changes, and things haven't been going his way since the beginning of the preseason. This patch, his Q's mana cost has been reduced from 20 to 44 to 20 to 40, and his Q's AP ratio increased from 30 to 35%. These buffs are very, very small, and it's likely he'll need some more in the future, so we'll leave him be for now. Talia has finally been buffed. Her Q now deals full damage to monsters at all times. This is a significant buff to her jungle clear, but with how she's been doing these past couple of patches, it's hard to push her up the tier list significantly. We've placed her in the C tier for now, but we'll let you know next week if she changes. The final change to the tier list we want to note is that we've added Poppy. While she's been played as a niche pick in the past, she's gaining traction as a more mainstream pick now. Her win rates are very impressive, but with nerfs to tank items, the whole class is taking a hit, and we'll safely place her in the A tier for now. Before we head into the mid lane next, we have our OP picks in the jungle, which are Hecarim, Graves, Kha'Zix, Nunu, and Amumu, followed by Evelynn, Rammus, and Kayn in the S tier. Next up, we have the mid lane. And just as a quick mention, I've been working very hard on that new channel. If you guys could send me some love and subscribe to the new channel, I would love it. That'd be super nice of you guys. Thank you guys again for being amazing supporters of ProGuides. And we just love making content for you guys, so thank you so much once again. Starting off with our first mid laner, we have Fizz. Fizz has been an issue for a while. He's been given a free pass this preseason as he has such a big mana pool to work with. At the beginning of preseason, his mana pool was increased in anticipation of a need for it, and Riot ended up saying, whoa, this has got to end. This patch, his mana per level was reduced from 57 to 37. He's been able to use his spells too frequently, and this nerf should help balance him out. Players will have to adapt by either building him differently, running new runes, or playing more conservatively as a result. We dropped Fizz from the OP tier to the S tier as a result of this change. Morgana mid is also a target this patch, as she's randomly been popping off as a solo laner. Her W DPS has gone down from 12 to 60 to 12 to 52. Support Morgana doesn't really use the W for damage, but instead for a little bit of poke and to generate income. Even for mid lane Morgana, this nerf isn't that big, so we're going to leave her untouched in the tier list for now. Next up is Annie, as her E's movement speed bonus has been reduced from 30 to 60 to 20 to 50. With less mobility, Annie's playmaking potential is going to go down significantly. Her E is her only means to get in or out of situations, and is her only movement speed modifier. With it being weaker, we expect Annie to take a decent hit in high elo, but remain a powerful one in low to mid elo. Thus, we'll keep our eyes on her for the course of this patch, but we'll be keeping her in the S tier pick for now. Anivia has also received massive changes this patch. Her basic attack animation got a big quality of life buff and should function better, as its missile speed was increased from 1500 to 1600. Next, her Q will chill enemies it passes over, while the damage has been nerfed slightly. Pass-through damage has been reduced from 60 to 160 plus 0.45 AP to 50 to 130 plus 0.25 AP. While the explosion damage went up from 60 to 160 plus 0.45 AP to 70 to 210 plus 0.5 AP. Also, the cooldown was decreased from 10 to 8 seconds to 11 to 7 seconds. Mana cost lowered from 80 to 120 to 80 to 100, and the missile speed increased from 800 to 950. The missile speed buff especially is a big one and should help her out, as well as much more access to movement speed through items. Her W's length has been changed from 400 to 800 to 500 to 800, while the cooldown has been changed from a flat 17 seconds to 20 to 16 seconds. Her E's mana cost was reduced from 50 to 90 to 40 flat, and the damage up from 50 to 150 plus 0.5 AP to 60 to 180 plus 0.6 AP. Finally, her ultimate's cooldown was reduced from 6 seconds to 4, 2.5, and 1 second based on ability level. The base damage reduced from 40 to 80 to 30 to 60. Overall, these are definitely buffs, and we expect Anivia to feel much stronger this patch. Anivia is up to the B tier this patch as a result. Next, Talon's W return damage is being increased from 45 to 125 to 45 to 145. Although seemingly small, this helps out Talon's wave clear significantly. More wave clear means more agency over games, as he should also be able to roam more effectively as a result. We're moving him up into the A tier this patch. Seraphine is still not being played mid, so Riot has gone and given her some more help as a solo laner. Her HP per level has gone up from 80 to 90, and her W will now shield Seraphine for only 50% more. Seraphine should have an easier time surviving as a solo act, but we'll leave her in place for now. Yasuo and Yone are still in need of buffs as they've gotten a minor one this patch. Their attack speed per level was increased from 2.5% to 3.5%, so they should be stronger late game picks. Also, crit items did get buffs, so they should also come out a bit stronger this patch as a result. Our OP picks in the mid lane are Zed and Akali, followed by Fizz, Victor, Echo, Annie, Katarina, Galio, Malphite, and Kayle in the S tier. That's it for the mid lane, guys. Let's talk about the bot lane next. You guys guessed it before you saw the video. Samira has been nerfed again. Get them all out during the preseason, Riot, so we don't have to see another marksman get nerfed over and over during the ranked season. Samira's passive knockup can only be used against knocked up enemies rather than immobilized enemies now. However, she can still dash into attack range against immobilized enemies. Clearly, it's a huge nerf as it'll be much harder to utilize. Her Q and R's lifesteal have also been reduced from 100% to 66%, so she won't be as strong of a highlight reel champion anymore. We're not ready to push her out of the OP tier just yet. We'll keep you updated next week. Hit that sub button if you want to be notified. Aside from lethality item nerfs, Jhin has also had his Q nerfed. His Q's bonus AD ratio has been reduced from 45 to 75% to 35 to 65%. While small, coupled alongside lethality item nerfs, players might need to find a new build for him. However, we do think he'll remain an OP pick. While there are plenty of videos and content showing Twitch being potentially OP, his win rates are rather low and he's definitely needing some buffs. His Q's attack speed has gone up from 30 to 50% to 40 to 60%. His W's slow has been increased from 25 to 45% to 30 to 50%, and his R's bonus AD has gone up from 20 to 40 to 25 to 55. Both AD and AP Twitch benefit from these changes though, so we think he'll be in a better place since he just got 3 buffs in one patch. Twitch is up to the B tier after these changes, but we'll let you know what happens next week. Our OP picks for the bottom lane are Samira, Jhin, and Vayne, followed by Ashe, Draven, Ezreal, Misfortune, and Kai'Sa in the S tier. To wrap things up, we have support. Now, supports are definitely expected to see some changes, but because the changes to items are almost universal, we'll just have to wait and see how the meta develops. With that said, Lulu got buffed this patch. Her Q now deals 25% increased damage if a target is hit by both bolts, and the Q damage has been changed from 80 to 200 to 70 to 210. Her Q has had its damage fall off removed, but it will deal 70% damage to minions, thus support Lulu hopefully won't resurface and dominate the game for the millionth time. So just stay in the OP tier for now. Rel is set for release this patch, so keep your eyes peeled. We've got a video covering her abilities, but nonetheless, she looks very exciting. We'll be creating content for her as well, so make sure to stay tuned for all of that on our channel. Our analysts predict that Yuumi or Sona might make it into the S tier this patch with the buff to Moonstone Renewer. I keep thinking whenever I say that word, it's like manure, which is a shame because it's such a beautiful looking item. While all support items did get a price reduction, having access to the healing will be more effective early on than later. In late game, players have more damage and can potentially burst through a target before you can save them. Earlier on, however, the extra health can feel much more impactful. It can also allow you to ensure your teammates are scaling into the mid to late game. Also, because Pantheon did get those nerfs, we're going to be moving him down from the S to the B tier, especially because he won't be able to block turret shots anymore. He's lost a ton of power as a support. That said, we have no real changes to report just yet, so we've got Leona and Lulu as our OP picks, followed by Thresh, Bard, Morgana, Nami, Janna, Alistar, Brand, and Nautilus in the S tier. Alright guys, that'll conclude our 10.25 patch rundown. Thank you guys again for all the support you guys have given me over the past couple years. And I really appreciate you guys liking and subscribing our new channel that features all of the cool documentaries that you guys will hopefully be interested in. Let me know what you guys think about the new channel in the comments down below. We look forward to seeing you guys in the next video, and good luck all of your games this preseason. That's it for the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Good luck in your next few games, and I'll see you on the Rift.